One of the most common business challenges that I see all creatives face is learning to overcome the fear of talking about price. This is something that I know most of us can relate to, sat in a meeting, skirting around the elephant in the room, until eventually the prospect asks, how much is this going to cost? Or, even worse, the topic of price is avoided completely and you agree to come back later with a proposal. Not talking about price in the first meeting, which is also known as the price anchor, is a recipe for disaster. It makes your life much harder, messing around with pointless proposals and coming up with arbitrary prices when it would have been much more effective to talk about price in that first meeting and face any objections head on. I'm saying this from my own experience, as when I first started, I clearly remember those meetings where I didn't have the confidence or skills to overcome that deep-rooted fear of rejection that most of us have. As a result, I closed fewer deals, charged less than I was worth, and wasted a lot of time on back and forths that could have been avoided had I only known how to overcome my fears of talking about price. Several years later, and after many books and courses on the topic of price and negotiating, I have all the tools to confidently talk about price and close many more deals than I used to. So, in this video, I want to share with you 5 tips that I found to be useful as a creative business owner to overcome the fear of talking about price. First and foremost, one of the most important things I've learned is that the conventions around talking about personal finance do not apply in business. In most cultures, we're taught not to talk about money. We'd feel uncomfortable asking someone how much they were earning, or if a stranger asked you, it would probably feel very out of place. In certain situations, it's impolite to ask how much something costs, and it can even be considered a sign of weakness. All of this usually comes from our upbringings, habits that are ingrained in us by our parents, our environment, and society. After a time, these habits become beliefs, and by the time we're adults, we probably don't even consider that there's an alternative way of thinking. So when it comes to business, sat in that meeting room across the table from the person with the checkbook, all those years of habits and beliefs about money subconsciously come into play. So there's a helpful distinction here to make. It's not suddenly to change a lifetime of beliefs about money, rather it's to understand that the conventions around personal finance do not apply to business. I found that by understanding and practicing this principle, I was able to easily learn new skills and beliefs around money rather than trying to change old ones. As a quick exercise, imagine yourself in a meeting room with one of your ideal clients. You've been talking for an hour or so and then it finally comes to the question, how much is this going to cost? Run the scenario through your mind at different price points. First at $500, then $1,000, $10,000, then $100,000. Pause this video and take a minute to try it. Notice all the thoughts and feelings that arise as you say each of these numbers. Does $500 roll off the tongue, but $10,000 makes you feel uncomfortable? And why is this? It's unlikely to be as a result of your experiences in business with money, rather a direct reflection of your personal experiences with finance. The first thing we must do in order to be successful as business owners is practice talking about money regularly, to get comfortable saying large numbers. Stop deferring the first mention of price to the proposal. As Blair Enns says in the Win Without Pitching manifesto, the solution is simple. Tell the client what the price is going to be before you write the proposal. I go into more detail on ways to do this and the practice of price anchoring in other videos, but if you take away just one lesson today, it's talk about money before you write a proposal. Implementing this one principle into my meetings made one of the greatest differences to my effectiveness as a business, helping me overcome my fears of talking about price, saving me many weeks with clients that weren't a good fit, and helping me close more deals much faster. Tip number 2 is always discuss value before price. While the previous tip was aimed at those who don't bring up price until too late, this one is for those who like to say a price too soon. Sometimes this can manifest as showing prices on your website, a big no-no for those who want to get away from charging competitive bottom dollar rates and working towards premium pricing. If you've been watching my other videos, you know that I'm all about gaining a deep understanding and a clear picture of the prospect's business before coming up with a solution. I've used the analogy of a doctor many times, where we're more likely to trust and value the ones that take time to question and understand our problems rather than prescribing a pill too soon. I outline what questions I use in my other videos on Master the Meeting. Before talking about price, we must help our prospects clearly visualize a future in which we've helped them overcome their business problems. This is a process that can only be achieved by asking the right questions and taking the prospect on a journey of discovery. In doing this, we too learn about the client's business, their needs, and the size of the problem they're facing. Equipping ourselves with all this knowledge makes it far easier to overcome any fears of talking about price. Rather than just plucking figures out of the air, we're creating a personal, relevant, and expected solution to their most important business problems. So the key here is to first understand the prospect's needs, then you can agree upon what value this project actually holds before finally saying a price. When we make the sales process a two-way street, with the prospect at the center rather than just our own beliefs and preconceptions about pricing, it makes it all that much easier. I've heard many public speakers say that the way they overcame their fears of talking in front of an audience was simply by making it less about themselves and more about providing value to those in front of them. This is a powerful way to reduce fear and anxiety when we consciously choose to focus on positive outcomes and helping others rather than just our own internal beliefs and dialogue. My third tip for overcoming fears of talking about price is to make sure you correctly qualified the prospect. Most fear stems from the unknown, a monkey brain survival mechanism where gaps in our knowledge encourage us to fear the worst. This is why my approach to business is all about equipping oneself with as much knowledge as possible so you can make more educated guesses and control the outcomes. So with this in mind, one of the best things that you can do before going into a meeting is already have some of the key information that you need to make good decisions. For example, can they afford your services? Qualifying can be as simple as sending a short form before moving forwards. I'll usually do this 24 to 48 hours before speaking to a new prospect, and there are a host of benefits. First, you ensure that the prospect is actually serious about working with you. While many business owners are scared of sending a form for fear of the prospect refusing and walking away, this can actually be a really good thing. If the prospect isn't willing to take 5 minutes to answer a few questions, what will they be like later on? Another benefit of qualifying form is that it demonstrates a level of professionalism. When I send one over, I'll say something like, "Please help me better understand your business and requirements by taking a few minutes to fill out this questionnaire." It will make sure that we get the most out of our meeting and help me provide as much relevant and valuable information as possible. So by phrasing it like this, it shows that you really care. You value their time as well as yours, and it sets your meeting up for success. By sending over a qualifying questionnaire, you're equipping yourself with key information about their business and the value of the project that will in turn reduce any fears of talking about price. My fourth tip for you today is to think about any potential objections before they arise. There's nothing worse than being caught off guard in a meeting when a prospect says something like, "You're the most expensive option, why should we pick you?" Or, "Your company isn't big enough for what we need." There actually aren't all that many different objections that they can come up with when you dig to the root of what's being said. For example, if a prospect tells you that you don't have enough experience, when you dig deeper, there's a good chance that what they actually mean is that they don't think your company is big enough and they're not used to working with an organization of your size. I've got a whole video and cheat sheet on overcoming objections, so I won't get into that here. But the point is, they're a lot easier to handle when you go in prepared. Simply writing down what objections are likely to come up, or using my cheat sheet, will prevent you from being caught off guard unnecessarily. There's no need to take them personally, and in fact, they're an important part of the sales process. But just like tip number 1, conventions about personal finance do not apply here. Unlike in a personal situation, an objection in a business scenario is an opportunity to be used constructively. Equip and prepare yourself by thinking ahead, and you'll reduce any fears of talking about price. In turn, you'll be able to help the prospect overcome any of their fears and doubts, and ultimately close more deals and win more clients. Tip number 5 is to focus on building rapport before thinking about price. I can recall when I first set up my business, walking into meetings I was blinded by the fears of talking about price, and my focus was just on closing the deal. If you've got a one-track mind, the prospect is probably going to sense this, and it's going to destroy any hopes of a healthy long-term relationship. Trust is one of the biggest prerequisites for a good business relationship, and so it's essential to focus on building rapport first. In doing this, you'll make it much easier to talk to the prospect about price when the moment comes. Think about how much easier it is to talk about sensitive subjects like money with friends than it is with strangers. Even if you slip up with a friend and say the wrong thing, you've built up enough rapport for it not to matter. And the same principles apply here. When you build trust and rapport with your prospects first, it becomes a lot easier to talk to them about pretty much anything. In turn, if the prospect doesn't like the price that you say, they'll be far more likely to tell you straight up and be willing to come to an agreement that you're both happy with, rather than just saying, "Come back with a proposal," and getting out of the room as quickly as they can. Finally, my sixth and bonus tip is not to underestimate the importance of having a good mindset. When you go into a meeting confidently, with clear and positive outcomes in mind, you're going to get drastically different results than if you go in a state of fear and uncertainty. While this is something that comes with practice and experience, there are a few things that you can focus on right now to improve your results. The first is your state. If you're slouched over and overwhelmed, then you won't be thinking clearly. Fix your posture, sit up straight, focus in on your breathing, and encourage yourself to smile. Meditation is also a powerful tool for this, but if you're not into that, practice these 3 things for 2 minutes straight before going into a meeting or making a phone call. So improve your posture, breathe long and steady breaths, and smile. Try it for 2 minutes before you go into a meeting and just see what the effects are to your mood and the final outcome. The second element to improve your mindset is language. Get into a habit of using positive, affirming language. So instead of "I can't do this," try "How can I do this?" Practice using words like abundance instead of scarcity, a great opportunity instead of just getting lucky, and focus on what resources you do have rather than what you're lacking. Positivity is infectious, and using empowering yes language will pass on to your prospects. The third element is your focus. We can always make a conscious choice to choose what we focus on. Just as we encourage our clients to visualize a scenario where we've helped them solve their business problems, we too can visualize success and focus on all the ways the meeting can go well. As I mentioned in tip number 2, when we focus on the other person and the ways that we can help them, we alleviate any personal fears and anxieties of talking about price. So there you have my 5 tips and 6th bonus tip on how to overcome fears of talking about price and ultimately land more clients and charge higher rates. To recap, they were: conventions around talking about personal finance do not apply to business. Always talk about the value before saying a price. Qualify your prospects to give yourself an informational advantage. Write down any objections before they arise. Build trust and rapport before talking about price. And small changes to your mindset can have great results. Now, before you go, I'd love to know in the comments if you found these tips useful and if you have any suggestions or experiences of your own. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.